Victor Teo joins us now live from Hong Kong. He's an assistant professor at the University of Hong Kong. Teo also specializes in international relations of the Asia Pacific. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. Now, this is probably the most significant development yet when we look at the recent measures the U.S. and China have been taking against each other. We've seen visa restrictions imposed, new rules on diplomatic travel, and even the expulsion of foreign correspondents. But what message is the U.S. trying to give with the closure of the consulate?
Well, I think it's a step in a long list of moves that the United States has taken against China. And this is really, I think, I would call it political theatrics. But this has to do with a broad set of narrative that the Americans are building up against China, that there is something inherently wrong with China, that China is ruled by the Communist Party. And because of this, all sorts of things the Chinese are doing across the world, particularly in the United States, the espionage, the theft of technology, etc., etc. So this is something that, this coincides with a series of reports or arrests in the United States of Chinese citizens who are allegedly sent by China to spy on the U.S. and steal their secrets. You can see that from the past few days, the Secretary of State has been going around making speeches almost every day about the inherent inherent dishonest character of the Chinese government. So I would say that this is really a concerted, if you like, strategy employed by the U.S. to ratchet up the tensions in U.S.-China relations.
Right. You mentioned spying there, and we've heard and seen that the U.S. also trying to crack down on Chinese spying. And one recent example is of the Singaporean man who pleaded guilty for being China's agent. Now, on one hand, America says, look, we have our evidence, but China is obviously, as always, denying the accusations. What's your take on that?
Well, first of all, I think this is a case where a third-party national is being caught fronting for intelligence agency. I think across the world, all intelligence agencies uses different strategies to collect their intelligence. And in this case, it just so happened that a Singaporean is being used by the Chinese to collect intelligence in the US. But having said that, as an international relations scholar, I would say that this is relatively normal for all countries. The Americans do this, the Russians do this, Israeli do this, so this is a case of one person getting exposed, but it doesn't absolve, of course, it doesn't absolve the Chinese of the responsibility of collecting intelligence. And we know from a fact that they are doing this, but they do not just target the Chinese. I believe they target everybody else, just like the Americans and the Russians would target everybody else too. But this certainly helps to build the United States case that the Chinese are doing this at the very moment.
Right now, Victor, China has already responded to the closure of the consulate, and they're asking for their consulate to be shut down as well. How far can we expect this exchange between the two countries to continue?
I think it would keep going until the U.S. presidential elections is decided. And I'm kind of worried because we're only in July, so we have actually a few more months to go. But I would say that this reflects really it's not just a case to do with what the Chinese is or are. It's really to do with U.S. domestic politics, particularly with how Trump is being weakened by the COVID crisis, and as well as his own policies following the trade war. It's certainly also it's indicative of the tensions in U.S.-China relations, even prior to Donald Trump's ascension as the president. So we are coming to a stage where the Chinese is seriously rivaling American power, and Americans are doing everything that they can to try and stop the Chinese in its tracks. So perhaps a new Cold War, perhaps not, but it really depends on how the U.S. elections goes, I think.
All right, Victor Teo, thank you so much for joining us on the program and sharing that insight with us.